Moving right along, we left off last video getting the basics of our list, as you can see here on the right. In this video, we're going to build the location detail screen that you see here, right? We got an image at the top, got some text, we got a row of buttons we're going to work on, and then we have our grid of faces down below. So just like last time, it's challenge time, right? Pull up this design, take a screenshot of it, whatever. Try to build it on your own. Like I said, building it on your own and then watching the video and comparing and contrasting how I did it, that compare and contrast part is always such a great way to learn. And it's certainly possible you may come up with a better way to write it than I did, right? I don't claim that every single line of my code is perfectly optimal and the perfect way to do it. Of course not. That would be silly. So if you did do it a different way and you think it's a little more optimal, definitely post in the comments. I love to compare and contrast. So anyway, yeah, go ahead, do that challenge. I think you'll learn a lot. And if you don't want to do the challenge, that's fine. We're going to build it right now together. Okay, so we're actually going to need a new file. So click the www folder, Command N, new file, SwiftUI view. We're going to call this location detail view. Hit create. And then, do the whole resume, get the hello world showing up. There we go. Okay, we know we're going to navigate to this view, right? We're coming from the list to this. So the first thing we're going to do is throw this in a navigation view and put the text in there, cut it, paste it. And for now, we'll leave it. We can't see the navigation bar yet. We will in a second. But I want to pull up the design and kind of break down the screen real quick just to, figure out how we're going to build this. This is what I do with my design. So I'll pull up the design and I'll look at it and be like, okay, this is a VStack, right? So we have the image at the top, we have some text, and then we have like a row of buttons. That row of buttons is going to be an H stack. And then continuing in the VStack, we're going to have our who's here label. And then the last piece of the VStack will be our grid, which holds, all of our faces, our avatar views. So the main, structure of this screen is a VStack. So that's what we're going to start with. Okay, back in the code, get rid of this hello world. Create a VStack, open and close the view builder. We're going to put the image in first. Well, it should be first. That's the top, right? So we're going to do image name because, again, right now we're going to use if we go to our assets, we're going to use our default banner asset. So I click in there, copy, go to location detail, paste in the string for default banner asset. Hit try again. We should see, again, some ridiculous. It doesn't look that ridiculous, but it is ridiculous, right? We want this to be resizable. Hopefully this is review by now. Now in this one, we're going to do scaled to fill, not fit, and I'll tell you why. So scaled to fill, we'll just make sure it fills up the whole parent view. And let me give the parent frame just so this will make more sense, right? Because what I'm going to do is on the frame, I'm only going to give it a height of 120. Let's get rid of this alignment. And then the width. So what happens when I get rid of the width is it's going to fill up the whole screen. And that's what we want, right? If we're on a giant iPhone 12 Max, we want it to still fill up the entire width of the screen. So that's why I did scale to fill. So it's going to fill up the parent container, but keep its aspect ratio, which is fine for these banner images because if like a little bit around the edges gets, chopped off because it's zoomed in a little bit, not a big deal there. So that's why we're going to give it the frame height of 120. Because again, we want that to be 120 no matter what phone size we're on. Now I need to push it up to the top. Well, we're already in a VStack, right? So all I need at the bottom of my VStack right now is a spacer. Eventually there's going to be all the other stuff, right? Like the text, all that good stuff. But for right now, we're going to use a spacer. Now you'll notice it doesn't look like it got pushed all the way to the top. Well, it did, but there's that pesky navigation bar there, right? So on the VStack, if I did navigation title and did, location name, because that's what it's going to be. We're going to pass the location name in here. There you go. But if I pull up the design, you'll look, that's not the navigation bar we want. We actually have what's called the inline navigation bar, which is like the smaller one at the top. Because going back to our Xcode, even though that, looks kind of cool, we like that big chunky, that's like the iOS look, sometimes that takes up too much space. And that's what I ran into on this screen, is that I needed all the vertical screen real estate I could get. So that is why I chose to go with the inline navigation bar. And to get that, it's just another modifier, .navigation title display mode. There you go. And then you can do c.automatic, or we'll do .inline, right? And you'll see that'll change. There you go. That's the inline look we're going for. Now, this change in iOS 14, you used to be able to just do like comma display mode. but you can't do that anymore with navigation title. Used to be navigation bar title, but that got deprecated. But that's kind of an example of the little tweaks they're making in SwiftUI, and they're deprecating like small syntax things just to make it cleaner. So now this is kind of like the new way you got to do it in iOS 14. 2 lines instead of 1. What are you going to do? But now we get that inline navigation bar, and it pushes our image up to the top, which is kind of the look we're going for. And again, I went with inline because I needed all the vertical screen real estate I could get on this one. So let's pull up the design, and we're just going to go down top to bottom, right? So we have our image in place. The next thing we want is the little address label you see there. And it's kind of, left aligned. So what I did there, because I didn't want to put an alignment on my VStack, because I didn't want every element in the VStack to be left aligned. I just wanted this address label to be pushed off to the left. I don't know, I just like the way that looked. If you like it centered, that's cool too. You don't have to do anything. But so because I want it pushed to the left, what I'm going to do is put it in an H stack and then put a spacer to the right of it to push it all the way over. So let's run that real quick. So below the image, type in H stack, and then we're going to have text, or I'm sorry, not text, a label, right? Because a label shows the image on the left and then the text on the right. And we want that little map pin. So we're going with label. So label here, and we want to make sure you hit system image, not just image name. So the title key that we want is going to be, we'll just do like 123 Main Street, just as a sample address. And then the system image, again, if I go back to SF symbols, we'll just search for map, because I know I want this map pin with the ellipsis at the bottom, this one right here. So see, this is a good example of where you'd want to do Command-Shift-C to copy it, or you can right-click, copy name, that works too, whatever you want to do. But yeah, that's a map pin .and.ellipse, like yeah, we're going to copy and paste that one. So back to Xcode, put it in here for the string. There we go. So you can see it's showing up right below our image, but we want it to be like grayed out, and we do want a different font size. So the font size we want here is .caption, because we do want this to be a little smaller. We don't want this to be super dominant. It's kind of like an additional piece of information that's not absolutely necessary to the functionality of the screen. So that's why it's kind of smaller and pushed off to the side here. And then I do want foreground color of .secondary, because I do want it to be like kind of like little gray out as well. So there's our label. And then again, in the H stack to the right of the label, we want to put a spacer, because that is going to, if I can type, that is going to push it all the way to the left, as you can see. However, that's too far to the left. We don't want it hugging the edge of the screen. We want to give a little padding in there. So I'm actually going to do it on the whole H stack here, just do padding. And then I don't want the vertical padding, because you can see it's giving too much space, or maybe you do, tweak this design however you like. I didn't want the vertical padding. So again, you can just do .horizontal just to get the leading and trailing padding. So that's what I wanted. Just like a little caption, tucked up under the image. That's the look I was going for. Okay, so back to the design. The next element we're going to build is our description. And we're going to limit that to 3 lines, right? Because I don't want a paragraph. I want it to be 3 lines, and then we'll do the typical, shrink it a little bit if you have to. And if you don't, go ahead and truncate it. However, this is where like being in control of your own data is very helpful, because you'll see when we get to the CloudKit portion, like we're in control of what the description says, right? We're not reading it from some random API that we have no control over. Again, the power of building your own data. So we can make our description small enough to fit here, right? We have that power. Okay, so below the H stack here, we're going to want a text, and then we're going to write, this is a test description, period. And then what I'm going to do, because I'm lazy, copy that, paste, 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 paste. Just to get like 3 lines. Well, just to be safe, we'll get rid of this last one. But we do want to test out like the 3 lines. So like I said, we want to start limiting this text, right? We want to do, first of all, line limit 3. We don't want this to go more than 3 lines. There you go. And then we want to do not multi-line text alignment, because we do want it to be aligned left. If you did want to center it, you would do multi-line text alignment, make it center. But we want it to do minimum scale factor. Get my modifiers confused here. 7.5. Again, that's just what I typically go with. If you want to tweak that, have at it. And then we want to give it some padding, but again, just horizontal, because you can see how it's really cramped on the left and right of the screen. So padding, and then .horizontal. There we go. Now, it is kind of cramped up against that. So what we are going to do in our overall VStack, this is where we're going to put some spacing in the VStack to just let things breathe, right? This is kind of what you can do. Instead of putting padding on every single like element, you can have it consistent in the VStack. So like our root VStack here, we can give it the spacing, right? And again, make sure you don't hit return here, because watch, it'll give you that and mess you all up. Like we don't want all of it. We just want to type out spacing. And again, as always, I just dialed it into 16, right? That was just me tweaking it, finding a good spacing that I liked. There you go. You can see it kind of spaced out. And now our description is coming together. Okay, now let's pull up the design real quick and look at the next element because it's not super tricky, but it is a little more advanced than what we've been doing. So we have this capsule that like holds our 4 buttons, right? So how I did that was there's a shape in SwiftUI called capsule. So we did a Z stack with the capsule on the bottom, and then I put my 4 buttons in an H stack on top of that, as the second layer of the Z stack on top of the capsule, right? So, and then our buttons are a Z stack in and of themselves where there's a green circle and then there's the image on top of it. So that's kind of the basics of how we're going to build that. So let's get started there. And by the way, we're going to refactor all of this into like reusable stuff. That comes later. And again, it's part of my process. When I'm first building the UI, I keep it all like unrefactored, right? Because I do find that like premature refactoring can come back to bite you like many times. So I like to kind of write it out longhand first. Okay, so let's build this Z stack, right? Remember, that's the foundational portion of it. And then the first item in there is the capsule. Remember, this is just this Swift shape, just like you could do circle or whatever. Okay, well, what's happening right now is the capsule's filling up all available space. We don't want to do that. We actually want to give it a fixed height here. So frame, because if you think about what a capsule shape is, well, if it's a square, it's going to be a circle. But we don't want a square. So let's get rid of the width because we do want it to basically fill the available space like it's doing right there. We're going to go 80 for the height. So that's what I kind of dialed in. And then we don't want it to be black, of course, right? We want to do foreground color. We're going to do, so iOS 13 introduced semantic colors. You don't quite like things like secondary system background, tertiary system background, label, and these are things that are flexible in light and dark mode. SwiftUI doesn't quite have all those yet, like just by doing like dot. Like I just do dot, like I get black, blue, brand primary. I mean, I don't have all those like system secondary, system tertiary, like I don't have access to all that, dot label. So what I'm gonna do, or what you can do to access those is initialize a color, and then in the initializer, you can do a UI color here, right? And then now I can just do dot, and you can see I can get system, and if I type background, you can see I get all this stuff right there. So I'm gonna do a secondary system background, and you'll see, especially in light mode, it's really faint. It really shows up a lot better in dark mode, but again, it's just a slight difference to make the row of buttons pop here. And again, you'll notice it's cramped up against the side, so you're gonna notice a bit of repeatable code here, right? This padding, dot horizontal. And you may be wondering, well, you can just put this padding on the whole, V stack and all that stuff. Again, we're going to come back to kind of refactoring this and cleaning all that stuff out. I'm just showing you my process, how I just like to write things out the long way and then go back and optimize. So, plus the other thing, if I did put the padding horizontal on my overall V stack, it's also going to apply to my image. And the look we want for our image is to be pinned up all the way to the edges. So the trade-off here is, okay, do I have to write padding horizontal, on a lot of my elements, or do I have to create like a separate V stack that doesn't include my image so it can stretch out to the edges? So you can kind of see the decisions and trade-offs you have to make when kind of structuring this. Okay, so we have our capsule in our Z stack here. Now the second element of our Z stack, right on top of it, we want our H stack of buttons, right? We want our row of buttons. So let's create the H stack. And then we'll create our button. So like I said, the button itself, pulling up the design, is another Z stack. The bottom of the Z stack is the green circle. Top of the Z stack is the SF symbol for the image. So if I do Z stack, we will refactor out this button just like I did the avatar view before. So we're going to do that. We want a circle, again, for the shape, just like we did with capsule. There we go, but that's, again, not the look we want. And then I want to give it a foreground color of dot brand primary, right? We're using that custom color again. And then now I want to give it a frame we're going to do 60 by 60. And again, this is just dialed in. I found a size that I liked. Okay, now on top of that Z stack, we have an image, which this is going to be our SF symbol. So we want to do system name, because that's going to give us the SF symbol access. Let's go back to SF symbols here. For right now, we'll do, I think you can just type direction. No. Map. No. Arrow. I'm trying to find the direction arrow. Sometimes, what you think the SF symbol would be under wouldn't be there. Maybe it's under location. I can't remember. Location? There we go. So there it is. Location.fill. That's what we want. So Command-Shift-C to copy. Back to Xcode. String paste it in there. There you go. So you can see it's smaller than we want it to be, and it's not the right color. So we want to do .foreground color .white. There we go. And then we can give it a frame. Oh, we need to make it resizable. Anytime you want an image to resize, you got to do resizable, right? We've been here before. Now it resized it to ridiculously huge, but then we tame that resizing with a frame, and we're going to give it 22 by 22. And again, the reason I'm hard coding these like sizes, like I don't need this button to be flexible. It's going to be the same size no matter what screen it's on. It's a button, you know? So that's why I'm like hard coding the frame. Okay, so this is our button, and instead of, copying and pasting this 4 times, for my sanity, we are going to refactor this. So I'm going to command click on the Z stack, extract a subview. There we go, here's our subview. I'm gonna call this location action button. Okay, so now this is gonna take in a couple properties, right? Because we wanna change the color. Again, pulling up the design, when you're checked in, the color changes to system pink. I'll call it red probably, but it's really system pink. And then also we want to be able to pass in whatever image, right? Because we don't want this location arrow for everything. So let's give our location action button some properties here. We'll say var color, and that is going to be of type color. And then we'll say var image name, and that is of type string, because we'll just pass in the string here. So instead of location fill, we'll say image name. And then instead of brand primary, we'll do just color that we're going to pass in. So we'll move this to a different file later. For now, we'll keep it here. Or I might not even move it because it is only applicable to this screen. That's kind of the way I do things. If a view that I refactored out is only applicable to this screen, I'll keep it in the file. However, if we're using this button type elsewhere throughout the app, then I'll kind of give it its own file so it's not confusing. Okay, so this is not an extracted view now. This is a location action button. And see, we get a color and an image name. Color is going to be brand primary. And then that image name is Command V, location fill. I always resume my preview to make sure we're still good to go. So now actually I just have the look of it. Well, this actually needs to be wrapped in a button, right? And then the action will go there. And then you just give it a label. This is multiple trailing closures here. We need an open brace, not a closed brace. There we go. And then, so the label is basically however you want your button to look, which is our location action button. And then I leave the action up there. Now, you might be wondering, because you can create this location action button to where it can take in an action. So you pass in a closure that we can pass in kind of like the function. Well, I find that to be too restrictive. Because as you're going to see, like, yes, this is great on a button, but sometimes it's within a navigation link, or sometimes it's just within a link. Like, one of these buttons is going to link to the website. So that's not a button action, that's wrapped up in what's called a link in iOS 14. So my personal preference, I have found just refactoring out the look of the button, that way I can use it and be more flexible with it, is better, rather than trying to, pass in a function, because it becomes very restrictive. And then, it's... Trust me, I ran into a lot of issues trying to do that. So I've kind of capitulated and just said, you know what, leave it separate, even though it looks a little sloppier. So what I am going to do is copy and paste this 4 times. So now we should have our 4 buttons. Hit try again in the H stack. There we go. And that's a little tight for my liking. So on the H stack on line 38 here, we want to do some spacing, right? Some consistent spacing in our H stack, and I just did 20. Yeah, that spaced it out like kind of how I liked it. So now, whenever these buttons are tapped, that's when we're going to do our various actions, right? We're going to deep link into the map. We're going to open up the website. We're going to make a phone call. We're going to check in and check out. That comes later. For now, let's change these here. We don't want them all to be location fill. If I go back to SF symbols, we want was this the website? So I think it was network. There's that. So right click, copy name, command tab. This is going to be Command V for network. There you go. You can see our icons. And then I believe this is just phone, right? Yep, there we go. No, phone.fill. That's another thing you can pretty much do. Like, everything has like a dot fill if you want it filled, so that you kind of know that. And then the check-in, this one's a little different, right? So let's go back to SF symbols. I believe I just typed in check. Yes, there we go. Person dot fill dot checkmark, whatever. Command Shift C. Back to Xcode, and then paste that in there. Now, this is where I forgot to do something. Well, I didn't forget to do something. I guess you would only discover it once you did this. So not all SF symbols are perfect squares. So if you notice down in our location action button, we didn't do a scale to fit, right? We just kind of like let it resize itself. But now if we do scale to fit, this is going to keep its aspect ratio. Right now, if you look at my little check mark button, it looks normal now. So keep an eye on that far right button. I'm going to comment it out. You can see now it looks stretched, commented back in. Now it looks like normal, how it's supposed to look. Okay, so that is our HStack of buttons. Again, once we implement the functionality, we'll come back and change this network one here to a link. In fact, I guess we can do it now. See, you just make this well, I'm just going to delete the whole thing. That's not the right syntax. So for that one, we do link, and then you initialize the link. You can see we get a destination and a label. So the destination is going to be, we're going to leave it apple.com right now, but we're obviously going to change that. And then you can see the label is going to be our location action button with the color.brand primary and the image name of network, right? So this is what I was talking about, how it's like sometimes you're in a link, sometimes you're in a button. So I just leave my styling just separate so I can be flexible with it. Okay, that is our capsule of buttons, right? So we're starting to make some progress. The next element in our VStack, pulling up the design, we just have a simple text label saying who's here, and then we have our grid. Okay, so you can see this is getting kind of pretty long, especially with my text super blown up. We will come back, refactor, make it look neater, but baby steps. So now the next element in our VStack, and double check to make sure you're in the VStack, is going to be a text that says, who's here? I think I capitalized that. I don't know. I don't know what the proper grammar is there. And this one's pretty simple. We just do font. Actually, you can just do dot bold. So something when you're right on a text, you can do just dot bold rather than font and bold if you want bold. And then we want to be title 2 is what we wanted there. So you see we get a nice little big who's here, and then we have a lot of space left over for our grid of faces. So now let's talk about the grid. Again, we covered this in SwiftUI Fundamentals if you took that. So I'll kind of go through it relatively quickly. It's pretty simple setup. So we're going to use a lazy V grid or vertical grid, right? Because our grid is vertical. We're not doing horizontal scrolling. I guess you could do that if you wanted to, but that's not how we're doing it. We're doing it vertical. That's more intuitive. So we want to do a lazy V grid. And if I initialize that, you can see, get some, we don't want all this, we don't want like alignment, spacing, pin views. We just want columns and content. That's all we want right now. So the columns are going to be this grid item fixed, right? 20, except we don't want dot fixed. We want dot flexible because we want it to, what flexible does is it stretches out to the edges, right? If we did a fixed column of 20 width, that's what it's going to be. It's going to only be 20 wide each column. But if we do flexible, it'll spread to like fill the screen, and that's what we want on the phones. So you see, this takes an array of grid items, right? So if we're gonna do 3 of these flexible grid items here. So I'm gonna copy this and comma space paste, comma space paste. So that gives us an array of 3 grid items. And then you can see I only have 2 of these placeholders. Let's do some quick copying and pasting for just effect here. So now you can see I have a bunch of those, and you can see I have 3 flexible columns, and you can see they're just filling up the width of the screen. That's what the flexible does. Now, of course, we don't want just a text of placeholder in there. We want like our actual avatar images here. So the first thing I'm going to do is this array of columns here. I'm going to Command X. We're going to cut that out here, and then up top, I'm going to do let columns, and we're going to refactor this out into the view model so it's not so sloppy. It's going to equal this array that I just cut and pasted. So we have 3 grid items. I kind of like to do this. I think it's easier to count how many I have when I do it like that. So now in my lazy V grid, instead of like having that whole array of grid items, I can just put in here, columns, right? And then the content, eventually, we're going to pass an array of checked in users. We're going to pull those users, avatars in and all that good stuff. Again, just setting up the structure. So instead of, 10 text placeholders, we want to do avatar view. And again, right now, if we go back to our avatar view, command click on it, jump to definition. Remember, we're just keeping default avatar. Eventually, once we build the functionality, we're going to pass in a size variable so we can make this adjustable because we're reusing it on our profile screen. And we're going to be able to pass in, the image that we want. But again, just for now, setting up the structure of the UI, we're not going to do that. So back to the detail view. So here we're going to do avatar view. We're going to, give us a bunch, right? Like there's a bunch of people checked in here. And I'm also doing this, crap. Also, I don't know what I hit. Give me back my canvas. Okay, you can only have 10 in a view. So that's what that was. That's kind of like not a limitation of SwiftUI because I think it's by design, but in a view builder, you can only have 10 views unless you pass in an array of something. But okay, so this is kind of what I was talking about with this avatar view. So we're gonna actually go ahead and do this now. So you see I have my avatars, there they are. However, they're super small. Remember I said this avatar view is gonna be reused. I said on the profile screen, I actually forgot, we reuse it here too. So we're gonna go ahead and implement that flexible size. So back to the location list view where we have the avatar view. Let's pass in var size, and that is of type CG float. And then here for width, we're gonna say size, and then here in height, we're gonna say size, because we know it's always a square. So I don't have to pass in a width and a height. Just give me, the size of it, 35 by 35, 60 by 60, whatever it is. Give me one size, and we'll make it the frame, be the width and the height for a perfect square. So I know I gotta fix this up here. So yep, do all these fix-its. Do all the fix-its. There's probably a quicker way to do this. I know you guys are probably yelling at me. Oh, good. So the size here, I can't even remember. Oh, it was 35, right? That was like the default. So 35, 35, 35, 35. Okay, hit resume just to make sure our list screen didn't break. Cool, yeah, it's fine. Okay, now location detail view. I am not gonna do what I just did. We're going to create one, say size of, I can't remember what this was. It was 64. I had to look that up. My mind went blank here. So now, well, I only have one of them. I'm only going to put in 3 because I forgot we got to do something as well. But you can see that's kind of what the avatars will start to look like. But pulling up the design, I forgot something, right? We got the first name underneath it, right? It's not just a picture, it's the first name. So we may come back and refactor this later. I'm going to create a separate view here. So if I go back to the location list view, right, you can imagine we could pass in a name. We could probably pass in like a flag or a Boolean to say, should this show the name? If not, and I just believe this avatar view becomes a little convoluted. So what we're gonna do here on our location detail view, so I'm gonna create another avatar view, call it attendee avatar view, or it's probably a confusing name. I'll call it like first name avatar view. So that's what we'll do here. So below location action button, let's create a struct first name avatar view that is of type view. And then we do type var body. You're gonna get the var body some view, open and close the view builder. There you go. So here I'm gonna wanna pass in var name, and that is a string. And then in the body here, we want a v stack because we want the avatar view on top and the z stack on the bottom. So avatar view, and then the size. For the, again, for this attendee, we know we want it to be 64. And then for the, where did my v stack go? Did I say that? I think I forgot about that. We want a v stack. I think I explained it, but forgot to type it. Man, I'm struggling on this part of the video. We won't even edit this out because it's just part of how it goes, right? We all kind of have brain farts and like, wait, why is my brain not working properly? So yes, we want a v stack, avatar view on top, and then a text with the name below it. And then we want to format that a little bit. We want that to be dot bold, and then we do want line limit of 1, right? And then we'll do a dot. Now we won't even shrink it. I think that might look weird. Nah, we'll shrink it. Minimum scale factor 0.75 in case somebody's got a really long first name. So again, pulling up the design, here's the avatar view, right? It's got the picture of the face and then just the person's first name. And actually, just to be clear, let's make the parameter say first name. So the user of our code doesn't try to like pass in the full name. Just be very clear on that. So Command C, Command V. And okay, so now we're gonna use this first name avatar view. Let me hit resume on my preview. Instead of this avatar view 64, we're going to do first name avatar view. You can see that's gonna take in a name, and we'll just do a whole bunch of Sean's for right now. But you can see how it's coming up. And if you did want to test, different name lengths, you could copy and paste this a few times, and change the name, Kelly or whatever. So there you go. Feel free to like test around with that. But again, we're just getting the basics of this view set up. Now let's go ahead and run this on the simulator because I want to show you something that I discovered, after testing. I know ahead of time. I kind of, spoilers. I know how this app works. But if we go to locations, oh crap. Okay, we should probably do that, right? I got to be able to navigate to it. So what we're going to do here, back to the location list view, is on our cell here, right, which is this H stack, which we haven't refactored out to the cell yet. So make sure I got the H stack. So again, you click this curly brace, left and right on the arrow keys. Cool, I'm on the H stack. I want to wrap this whole HStack in a navigation view. But you know what? I want to refactor this cell first because it's really sloppy when you're trying to do all this. So we're going to save that for the next video because this video is already getting kind of long. That would probably add a whole nother 10 minutes on, because back to the location detail view, what we're going to do here is we're going to wrap this in a scroll view, because what's going to happen in just a grid, like if we have more people, like we're not going to be able to scroll it. Like if I run the preview here, like there's no scrolling action, right? It would just be static. So if I did have like 50 people there, well, you'd only see the first 9 or so and you wouldn't be able to scroll. So we're going to save that for the next video. Let's pause right here. In the next video, we're going to clean this up a little bit, do a little bit of refactoring, connect the 2 screens with a navigation link, and then we'll kind of wrap up this portion of the screen before we move on to the profile screen.